It was a quiet town, the kind that seemed to breathe slower than the rest of the world. In the heart of it sat a park, framed by tall oaks, whose leaves whispered to each other when the wind passed through. There was a cobblestone path winding around a small pond, where ducks bobbed in the water and dragonflies skimmed the surface. Every morning, without fail, the same man walked that path. His name was Walter, though most people didn't know it. They simply called him the man on the bench. He was always dressed the same way, a worn tweed coat that had seen more winters than most of the people in town, a flat cap tilted slightly forward, and a sturdy cane that tapped against the stones in slow, measured beats. Tick, tick, tick. It was the sound of time itself making its way to the same place, every day. Walter would arrive at the park just as the first light spilled over the rooftops. The air would still be cool, holding on to the last traces of night. He always stopped at the bakery on the corner first, buying a small paper bag of breadcrumbs. The baker, a kind woman named Marie, never charged him full price. She claimed the crumbs were leftovers, but Walter knew she baked a little extra bread each day just for him. From the bakery, he'd make his way to his bench. Not just any bench, but the bench. It was painted green once, though most of the paint had peeled away over the decades, revealing weathered wood beneath. The seat dipped slightly in the middle, shaped by years of people sitting there. Walter would scatter the crumbs for the ducks, then settle down with a small leather notebook he always carried. He rarely wrote in it. Sometimes he would flip it open, look at the pages for a long time, and smile faintly before closing it again. People wondered about him. Some guessed he was a retired professor. Others thought he might be a widower holding on to memories. Children asked their parents about him, and the parents would shrug and say, "He's just always been here." Walter didn't mind the guessing. In truth, he liked being a small mystery in a world that moved too fast to care about such things. But there was one truth, a quiet, private truth, that kept bringing him back to that bench. 60 years earlier, on a bright spring afternoon, Walter had been a young man, freshly returned from military service. The town was smaller then, the park newer. He had wandered in, feeling out of place in civilian life, unsure of what came next. And there she was, a young woman in a blue dress, sitting on that same bench, sketching in a notebook. The sun caught her hair in a way that made it glow, and Walter remembered thinking, "I have to talk to her." "Mind if I share the bench?" he had asked, nervously shifting his weight from one foot to the other. She looked up with a smile that seemed to quiet the world. "Of course." Her name was Margaret. They talked for hours that day, about everything and nothing. Books, music, the way the air smelled before it rained. He learned she came to the park often to draw, that she loved the ducks even though they were greedy little things. By the time the sun dipped low, Walter knew. He didn't know how or why, but he knew he would spend his life with her. Over the years, the bench became their place. When Walter proposed, it was right there under the blooming cherry tree. She said yes before he could finish asking. They had picnics on sunny days, huddled under umbrellas during sudden showers, and brought their children there when they were young. The bench became part of the family, part of their love story, even in their later years. When her hair had turned silver and her hands trembled just slightly, Margaret would hold his arm and say, "Let's go see the ducks, Walter." But time, as it always does, kept moving. One winter, Margaret fell ill. She spent her last days in a quiet hospital room, her smile softer but still just as warm. On a snowy afternoon, she squeezed his hand and whispered, "I'll save you a spot." And then she was gone. Walter didn't come to the park for a long time after that. The bench felt too empty, too quiet. But one morning, months later, he found himself walking the path again. He sat down, and though she wasn't there, He could almost feel the warmth beside him. From then on, he came every day, not to mourn, but to remember, to keep the promise that love is not something the years can steal. One autumn morning, a young boy named Sam was playing near the pond. He had seen Walter before but never spoken to him. This time, curiosity got the better of him. "Mister," the boy asked, "why do you come here every day?" Walter looked at him with gentle, weathered eyes. "Because, my little friend, this is where I first met my wife. 60 years ago. She sat right here and I sat beside her. We never stopped sharing this bench." The boy frowned. "Where is she now?" Walter smiled softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's gone home ahead of me, but I like to think she's still saving me a spot." The boy didn't understand all of it, but something about the answer made him sit down beside Walter. They watched the ducks together in comfortable silence. The next morning, the boy came back, and the morning after that. Soon Walter found he wasn't alone anymore. The bench still held its memories, but now it also held laughter again. Young laughter, bright and full of life. Walter liked to think Margaret would have approved. Years later, after Walter was gone, people still saw the boy, now grown, sitting on the same bench. Sometimes with his own children, sometimes alone, always with a small paper bag of breadcrumbs. The town still called it the man's bench, but those who knew the story understood. It wasn't just a bench. It was a meeting place for love that lasted beyond a lifetime. And maybe, somewhere, Margaret and Walter were sitting together once more, still sharing the best seat in the park.